So Diogo, welcome again, and yeah, please tell us, how did you first learn about independent living? What was the impact of it in your life?
So, well, I first heard about the concept of independent living probably in 2012, I think, and it was part of a meeting from an activist group here in Portugal. So we were discussing the next steps, and then someone said, "What about independent living?" And actually, most of us were like, What's that?" Because it wasn't the thing in Portugal, so people actually didn't know about this concept and this idea. So this was completely game changing. Like, I would say, like, it's still it's one of those moments when you feel like everything you believe on is uh, uh, start to fit into one concept, and that makes perfect sense to you when it is explained the first time.
Oh, the term itself didn't change anything, but my lifestyle changed from living in, having lived 5 years, for 5 years, in a hospital ward, and then suddenly within a few weeks, almost living on campus among students of my age, in the 60s. That was mind-blowing. I wasn't used to that. Everybody else had long hair. I had short hair. I was behind the times. There's so much I didn't grasp. I just had to relearn everything. After having been in the hospital from the age of 17 to 22, there was a lot to catch up.
It was like almost taking a drug, because then suddenly I was in my own home, sleeping and living and doing back to the life where I was before I went into the residential home. So that was a huge success. But it took 4.5 years to achieve that. It was painful going through all that time, knowing I could do it, but we had to go through all the red tape and convince the authorities that to do it, because nobody could believe that somebody who had 24/7 support needs would be able to do that. And we were accused of all kinds of things, like using the money for drugs and gambling and drinking and all sorts of other things. But we told them, well, that would be stupid, because if we did that, then we couldn't survive.
And I never accepted so far my disability, because everybody called me handicapped, and related to me like with very how to say, this like disadvantaged person, and with mercy. And I was really, I felt like I'm not from this world. And when I met Kapka, and when I heard how she started talking about our rights, about disability, that about independent living, personal assistance, that the disability is not our problem, but is a problem as the relation between the environment and disability. And I was so impressed that I said, this is my person, this is my man. my lady. And yeah, that was my first meeting with actually Capca Panayotova is person who I recognized as independent living um, in Bulgaria.
I think I understood about IL when I had problems to go to school. There was the lack of support at school, with only a few hours of teaching assistance. Then, it was the lack of money to pay for my personal assistance, because I didn't have enough financial aid. That made me realize that I had to fight for the right to independent living.
Well, the first time I learned about the independent living philosophy, that was through my friend and colleague Bente Skansgård. She's a pretty known person in the movement. And when I talked to her, I kind of was inspired by the way she was thinking and, you know, describing how my life could be. I had been in an accident and I was in need of personal assistant, and she has heard about this model within the independent living movement. She had been to the States, learned from Judy Human, and she had a lot of experience talking to Adolf Ratzka. So that was also my, you know, starting my learning process with independent living philosophy. And then together with Bente and some other persons, we actually started Yuluba in Norway in 1991. And Yuluba is one of the independent living movement's organizations, and actually by this date, the only one in Norway. So we learned a lot from the US, but mostly we had a dialogue with Adolf Ratzka and still Stockholm Independent Living Cooperative.
We have some idea how we wanted to live, and we did not know that that means independent living.
Yeah,
We wanted just to live like everybody else, to have to go to the concerts, to study, to have fun and things like this.
And even before that, I live independently, but I didn't realize that it's named independent living. So for me, that was interesting when I met people who were pioneer of independent living in Europe and around the globe, like Kalle Konkola, like Gordana Rajkov, like Adolf Ratzka, and that happened 1997, 1998, and 1999. And that was how I met independent living as a philosophy, as a movement. And at that time, I realized that I practice independent living.
In my case, as in many other cases, the concept was clear before the word was there. And incidentally, I never thought that the word independent living was a fortunate choice, because it may make sense in the US. It does not make sense in Asia, where people don't want to be independent because that means you're away from anybody else. And it doesn't make so much sense in Europe either, because the individualistic tradition is not as strong yet as in the US. It would have been much better to decide on a term like self-determination. That's my favorite one, and I use it as often as I can. Self-determination.
Was there anyone who you'd say was afraid of independent living and put up, you know, made things difficult for you?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think there were quite a lot of people who made things difficult. I mean, the first that come to mind are the social care and healthcare professionals, because I remember one professor of rehabilitation. He had quite a lot of power at the time in Southampton, which was part of Hampshire then, and he completely was adamant that we would never be able to achieve it. People with such care needs, was 24/7, as I said before. Those people, that we would never be able to do it, and so he came up with this idea, this crazy idea to have two of us from this Project 81, the project that we had from the residential home, to go and stay in what was called an independent living bungalow in a hospital, which was fully adapted with all the mod cons of microwaves and supposedly designed for a wheelchair user and everything else. So we, basically I said I didn't want to do it. Yeah, and all the others said, look, we've got to do this. We've got to play the game here, because if we don't, then we probably won't be able to, and Casper, I said, this guy's never going to change. He's going to hold out, and I'm sure when we go there, he'll make something. Anyway, we gave in and we decided we would go there. One thing I remember when I was there actually was Bob Marley died, which is a big shock. It was, but anyway, we were there, and one of the, we worked with the occupational therapist in that hospital all the time, and in fact, we developed a relationship with her, which we then kept for many, many years afterwards, and she still is quite a colleague, and even became a friend as well in the end, because she became one of our big supporters, realizing because we would with her all the time, and we were telling her what we were wanting to do and why. She completely agreed with all our motives and ideas, and so yeah, we did it. And one of the most difficult things we had was keeping our PAs with enough beer money to drink when they were off, because when we were in the day, they were going off to the nearest pubs and having a few drinks. And so, but anyway, we did it, and we it was successful, but there was no kind of measurement or no, but because of this, OT took to her liking. She basically spoke on our behalf and gave quite a good report, I think, about what we were able to do and all that, and said she fully supported what we were doing. And this professor of rehabilitation still sort of was very adamant that, well, you've done, but we proved him wrong, that we and in the end, we proved him wrong completely, because we all did it and we all moved out.
I think that a lot of individuals and organizations and the governments are afraid of independent living. The main problem is that the disabled persons themselves and their families are afraid of it, especially in a country like Greece, which is very family-centered. Everyone believes that we want to take disabled persons away from their families. All the governments are afraid of the cost of it, and I believe that they also afraid that disabled persons will become more emancipated and will be asking for more and more all the time. Now that they keep us we are not independent, we can be controlled more easily. The same goes for the official disability movement in Greece.
Right. Well, they want to do something, but they still want to keep control over our lives. They don't, I think they are afraid of giving people too much to take full power and control over their own life. I don't know really why.
It's not like no one told us that we don't have rights to have independent living, or we don't have the right to be independent or full citizens or whatever. No one said that, but what they don't agree with us is the way we want to make this happen. So they disagree on the way we can be full citizens.
And
So when was the
who are these sectors? Who are these two sectors?
yeah when was the right-wing governments at the time? They were not very happy to welcome this for two reasons, and one of them is completely related to the second sector. So the second sector is the institutional part of the society, which they have a lot of institutions, and they provide a lot of services which are based on money which comes from the government. So the government pays to these institutions to have their people in different setups. It's not just putting them forever living inside the institution, but there are some setups which are basically a place where people can spend their days and things like that, and they go back home by the end of the day and get back in the morning. So there are a lot of different services they want to keep because it's their business. So the problem is this right-wing government is very linked to this sector, because this sector is mainly controlled by the church, and there is this relationship between some political parties and church, because they identify themselves as very Catholic and things like that. So they are very, very connected to this, and they believe that this sector is like the way we should manage in society, because they are kind and they are providing things for people, and they are being good persons, etc. So there was this conflict, and they were very connected because both believed the same thing, until these governments had problems, and then was replaced by a leftish, let's say, government which don't believe in the very same things, but they still have some relations with these entities as well.
What are the current barriers to independent living in your country?
You can go on, yeah.
Institutionalization. because when you need full-time assistance in France, you are systematically put in institutions.
You can go on, Nico.
Legal capacity, guardianship. Anyone can report to the prosecutor for guardianship. It's very scary. Also DI, psychiatric hospitalization for autistic people. You know, it is very difficult to live independently when you are a non-speaker.
I would say as well, out of sheer love and respect and all of that, that sometimes family can be a barrier to independent living for young disabled people and for disabled people. And I would say probably more so those who have an intellectual impairment, for example, or an intellectual disability. But again, what I would be saying is that we have to remember that everyone has human rights and that they should be supported. Anyone should be supported, no matter where they need the support to being able to live their best lives. And I think that's really important because, again, and I think this in the best sense as well. I don't mean like families as there can do it from a good place, but I've often said this before, where we in Ireland in education we have special needs assistants who assist us in classroom assistants, for example, and then other people who can have carers, for example, which is very different from a personal assistant. And quite often carers or SNAs or special needs assistants can actually disempower disabled people. And I can say that because I've been a teacher and I've seen, as a disabled person and who was a teacher, as a disabled teacher, I could see some of my students being disempowered by their SNAs and how that was even taken away, their choice and their control at a very young age, which definitely does have a knock-off effect. And I think that's really important, that we remember that the disabled person has to be supported to make sure that their will and preference and that they are supported no matter what way, to make sure that they get to live the way that they want to live, or what's best for in their best interest, in line with their human rights.
Maybe that's not new, but we're trying to convince some of the families of people with disabilities that we are in the same boat.
Actually, people here are used to minimalize their needs, their standards, just to something that, for example, when we in 2010 we have 10 or even in one moment 17 users through the project, and in 2013 city actually approved only for 4 or 5 of us, and some of them lost the service. And in 2017, when we assessed the needs again, because city decided to approve more money, they told us that these 5 or 6 years they use the assistance only for hygiene needs or for basic needs, and they were lucky they have someone to come to assist them to go to the toilet or to get from the bed or going. It is something that put people in a situation just to pressure themselves and to close themselves in the basic, as my colleague Lila said, on biology.
Yeah, I must say that even the 50-year past, most of relevant actors still don't understand the independent living philosophy, either in mainstream institutions, authorities, and also within the disability movement, because still charity and medical approach to our disability issue is main approach to our disability in Bosnia and Herzegovina society, and I have a feeling all across the Europe.
Even the new European policy for our rights is not very strict to the convention and the general comments. I believe that at least in Greece, everyone is trying to misinterpret it, and maybe there must be a strict terminology of what is independent living, what is an institution, so that they cannot overcome it and use European funding for exactly the wrong orientation and the wrong approaches and the wrong solutions.
I think there has been two major barriers as I see it. The first barrier, who is I think quite the same all over the world, that's the the way people still see and think of disabled persons. We are still seen as weak and people with no resources. We are seen as sick people who need treatment, and we are seen as people who the professionals, they are the expert. We are not experts on ourselves. Many people amongst us are seen as people who are not incapable to take responsibility in our own life. I mean, this way of looking at disabled people, it is a huge barrier for us to be equal to other citizens in Norway. And I also think that's the same situation in Europe and in the world. And also in Norway, I do think, we have this welfare system. The government, the state, they provide a lot of services for people who are in need of services, and disabled people also, have services kind of like home care helper, institutions, other kinds of services that you need. And some of these services are, they are good and they are adequate, and they are, the right type of services to be equal and to participate. But very many of these services, they do the opposite. They keep you as a passive individual that cannot leave your home, or they place you in an institution, and they sort of keep you down, but they still keep you in life, so to say, so that people don't react on these services as they should.
Now there is a discussion about deinstitutionalization, and sometimes I'm asking myself, will this really be deinstitutionalization, or will be just decentralization, moving in a smaller sized institutions, so it's quite a big issue also. You can live in your home, but if the services you need are institutionalized in a way that they are run by others for you, that means that you have done the institution in your home. It does not, the institutions are not the changeable way of life or way of living. Yeah, it's not the walls around you. Institutions are not the walls around you. Institutions are the rules around you, and who is in charge of those rules and who run the services you need for living independently. That's how we see it.
Claudia, you say it perfectly, like Michel Foucault will say it.
Yeah.
At the end, I would like to say that is really important for us as a movement to use experience from each other and to use opportunity to meet each other in person, not just virtually or via internet, whatever, but in person, because that's also one way how we as a disability movement become much more stronger and get support from each other. For that, I think the Freedom Drive as the biggest EU gathering of persons with disability is something really important.
I mean, I think one of the important things which we shouldn't forget is that one of the best things the independent living movement came up with, and this is worldwide because it originally started in Berkeley, California, and then we inherited in this country and then other countries as well, and ENO too, is peer support. You know, the importance of peer support, the importance of the positive role models that others can play in their lives to show the benefits of what independent living can do to people. And I think that's certainly something that, yeah, I don't think it is as strong anymore than what it was, but it's certainly not as strong in this country. And I'm constantly going on about it. The fact that we don't have that as much peer support as we used to, you know, and I think part of that is to do with many of the independent living organizations and disability political organizations have had their money or their funding cut so much that they've lost, well, not lost the initiative, but lost the ability to do so much, you know, because they're limited in their funds.
I see it as the greatest achievement of the center because peer support within the center changed life for almost 350 people from 2010 when it started in this form to now. And the only organization in Serbia that offers this support is center. And I said that I'm a peer supporter, and among all of things that I'm doing, even the research part, because I really love linguistics and everything around or connected with my professional choice, I really enjoy the most in offering and even receiving peer support.
I think, you know, for me, independent living has been very much rooted in my peer support networks that I have experienced. So I suppose my own impairment, which is called arthrogryposis, it's a long terminology, but we have our own support group on a national level, and I would have met a lot of peers there who, you know, would have been talking about personal assistance, about independent living, about, you know, going to university when I was a young child, I suppose, and then a young person, a teenager, and then as an adult. So I suppose that's probably where I heard about personal assistance, I suppose, firstly, and I suppose it's important for me to say that I am a wheelchair user and I do use a personal assistance service to live independently. So that was a big key to unlock my independent living journey.
I see the independent living movement as a self-help movement. in the traditional sense. And they use concepts such as peer support. Just think of the Alcoholic Anonymous. They use peer support. They support each other, meaning you share the fruits of your experience with other people, so they too can benefit from and might not have to repeat all the mistakes you made. So that, I think, is very important, because hardly anybody does it. Not the traditional disability organizations, at least.
What should be the priorities of IL advocacy for the next 5 years? End of institutions. The right for real instruction. The right to communicate. Legal capacity. I hope things will change. I believe that to develop new system, strategies must be adapted to different audiences and situations. For example, with associations that don't represent disabled people but take national decisions, you can't be consensual. It is the responsibility of society to provide support, but it must respect our rights and not control our lives.
Revolutionary, like we were.
No, we are not so revolutionary like we were 30 years ago, but still, I think it's also very hard when you are looking in the future and you see that there actually are no young people interested in such kind of activism. That means that most of the people who is still involved and fighting in changing other things, not just personal assistance, are our age. So it's like for the young, it's different. They did not go in institutions. I can understand that they already had integrated, well, a lot of them had possibility to go to school in their own town and stay in their own families, so they did not experience the
Hard living.
hard living of institutions or the different like
Discrimination
and so on. So this is quite an issue, how to get involved more young people in what we are talking about, because when we are talking about what happened 40 years ago, they're looking at us like, oh, those old people are having some memories about their student times.
I think it starts with ourselves as disabled people. And also we have to start to see ourselves as, people with the same value as everyone else. We need to climb our rights and our rights, and go on the barricades, write articles, talk together, be strong together, all these things. It's important, and it takes time, and it won't stop, I think not. So it's and every person counts. Absolutely.
Well, I would like to be clear that when I said before, we had a long way to go. I wanted to say we are only getting started, but we have most of the way to go, not a long way to go, if you know the difference. We are only getting on the right path to achieve our independent living.